Hi there, Sandra here from Creating Spain. One of the benefits of having a cutting machine is that you can make your own stencils. Now, I habitually make stencils from a relatively heavyweight card. I sometimes make stencils from an acetate. I sometimes make stencils from actual stencil material. Depends what I'm doing and whether I think I'm going to be keeping it or not. The other thing which is really handy is that you can do a 2-for-1 when you're making stencils. Now, if you don't get what I mean, have a look at this card. This card has been embossed using a stencil. Now, if you happen to have a traditional metal die cutting machine, you can use your stencils and roll them through one of those. But sometimes you might find they're too big, or perhaps you haven't got one, and maybe you want to do the embossing on your cutting machine. And for the most part you can, as long as you're able to either purchase an embossing tool, or if you have a pen holder, you can generally do embossing. Now, with the scan and cut, you need to have a dedicated embossing tool normally, but if you put an empty biro into your pen holder, you can use that to emboss as well. So you don't absolutely have to. There are workarounds. Now, the great thing is that it's relatively easy to make your own embossing files. When you're making your stencil file, you have your piece of card or whatever, and you have whatever design you decided that you wanted to make a stencil of. Okay, nice and easy so far. Well, the only thing that you have to do if you want to make it embossed is to add an interior offset of between, whoops, didn't draw that very well, 0.5 and 1.5 millimeters. This interior line, you make a draw line. That is most important. You don't bother doing an offset of the outside, you don't want it, you just want that. So when you export the file, if you're not working in Canvas Workspace anyway, when you export the file as an FCM from SureCut slot, it already knows that that is a drawing line and the outside is a cut line. So if you're making your stencil at the same time as you're doing your embossing, it's a very straightforward process. You put your card on the mat, you cut out the stencil, you weed the stencil, you put your card over the top, you then change to your embossing tool, and then you tell it to do the embossing. And once you've finished, you end up with something like this. Now, I don't know if you can actually see the pattern on there too well, but I'm going to remove it from the mat so you can have a better look. Now, this is a very satisfying thing to do, and you don't have to do it with a particular stylized pattern. Sometimes it's nice just to do it with things like lines and stuff like that, and shapes, because you can give yourself a really nice background card to do that. So that was my stencil. This is what I get when I've done it, which is really pretty, and that will make a really nice card background. What I did with this one was I started off with the embossing, and then, because I'd actually cut it from this acetate, I took the pieces of the acetate and I coloured them with alcohol marker. And I put those on top, I just stuck them on. And then I thought, I could use that as a stencil over the top, which I did with acrylic paint, because acrylic will stick to anything. And that was the finished result, and I just put it onto a white background card and put a sentiment on. So very effective, quite dimensional, but it's still a flat card, so it's not going to be bulky to post. and I think it looks very effective. Now you might be thinking, well that's okay, but what if I've already got my stencil made and I don't have the file for it? Well, if you have a scan and cut, what you can do is take your stencil, put it on your mat and scan it in. But instead of doing a direct cut or anything else like that, what you want to do is scan it to data and then save the image as a JPEG onto a USB. That way you can put it into shortcuts a lot. You can either do a trace on it if you need to do a trace, or if you have the original file still, as I did, you can make the offset from the original file, and then all you have to do is to line it up. Now I did find that when I made the file go over the top of this in my shortcut slot, it lined up. When it was actually exported as an FCM and put onto the machine, it didn't line up. But you have a lining up capability anyway, so it's really not that hard, because all you do when you do your interior offset is you make sure to group everything. So you've only got to move one item, that's it. You don't have to move all the individual little pieces, just the one item, and get that in place. And you can zoom in order to be able to get it in the right place. So that's it. That's making use of your ability to make stencils and to emboss without any extra equipment or plug-in cards or anything that are going to cost you money. That's the cheap way of doing it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon. Take care now.